Major League Rugby is back. And so are we, baby! This is the return of the All-American Rugby Podcast. Now, there's been a whole lot of change in US rugby since we last spoke almost 2 years ago. For a start, Ilona Maher has exploded into the stratosphere. She's taken over the world. She won an Olympic bronze medal with the US women's sevens team in Paris last summer. She was on Dancing with the Stars, finished as a runner-up there. She's now taken over the PWR League in England with the Bristol Bears, got to a semi-final there as a minimum, might even make it to the final. So she's exploded, taken rugby in America to a whole new level and to a whole new audience, which is incredible. Furthermore, in women's rugby, we've got the upcoming arrival of WER, Women's Elite Rugby, which we'll talk about a bit later in the show, which is really, really exciting as well. It's come at exactly the right time to capitalise on the attention that Ilona Maher has brought to the sport. And then on the men's side, there's been huge changes in Major League Rugby as well since we last spoke. We've lost a few teams since then, former champions, the Rugby New York Ironworkers, or whatever the hell they were referring to themselves as now. There's their old shirt on the wall, back from when they existed. RIP, RNY. We've also lost the Toronto Arrows, which is a big shame. No Canadian representation in the league anymore. And the Dallas Jackals as well have gone kaput after their most successful season ever last year. It was a real shame to see them go. In their place, we have three new teams. We have RFCLA, Los Angeles, back in the MLR fold, which is great to see. The Miami Sharks, long anticipated. They're here, bright, beautiful colours. And also, Anthem Rugby Carolina, who haven't had the best of starts, I see, but they're here and hopefully not just making up the numbers this year. It gives us a league of 11 teams at the moment, still split into the Classic 2 conferences, East and West. One team at least gets a bye every single week, but we'll talk more about that a little bit later on. In week 1, it was the Utah Warriors, MLR stalwarts, OGs. They've had a week off this week, but I think we should get into all of this week's MLR action to kick off the show. So our season opening game saw the Miami Sharks host Old Glory DC, and what an opening game it was. One hell of a start to the season. Axel Muller scored a try for DC in about 2 minutes. From the kickoff, Miami Sharks' Alec McDonnell received a red card for hitting one of the DC props in the head with a high tackle. So gone inside 3 minutes. Ridiculous way to start the season, and not great if you're a Miami fan. Obviously, DC took full advantage of the numbers, roared themselves into a pretty good lead. But owing to the 20-minute red card rule, which I fucking hate, I think it's absolute bullshit. I'll talk about this again later on in the show, but 20-minute red cards are nonsense. Psychological boost that the team receives after 20 minutes when they come back up to 15 players is evident repeatedly in every league that plays this 20-minute red card. And Miami, once they got back up to their full complement of players, roared back into the game. An incredible comeback that eventually saw them take the lead, led by Thomas Kubeli at scrum half, Thomas Kubisha at centre. Both Argentinians and then Uruguayan Manu Ardau as well were outstanding. It turned out that with 7 minutes left to play, Miami were 29 points to 17 ahead, a 12-point lead. Kubisha and Ardau both then received yellow cards basically back-to-back, almost immediately from consecutive penalties, basically. Which took Miami back down to 13 players. Their fly half, Martin Elias, did an incredible try-saving tackle, managed to knock the ball free when it looked like Old Glory were in for another try. But yeah, managed to save it. But a penalty followed. Miami were able to clear their lines, but Jason Robertson, the DC fly half, did his best impression of Billy Whiz Jason Robinson, former England winger, with an incredible line break try and the conversion to get DC back within 5 points heading into the final minutes. Miami found themselves with the possession of the ball. All they had to do was see out the clock, and they'd ground it down until the clock was in the red. The game was finished. All they had to do was kick it out. And somehow their scrum half contrived to have his box kick charged down. He had players in the pocket could have passed it to, had an easy clear kick out, but no, took it upon himself. Kick charged down, back into DC hands with one final Hail Mary play. Robertson crossfield kick inexplicably when they had the numerical advantage and could have just run through phases, and eventually they would have got there. Kicked the ball away, looked like Miami's two covering defenders were going to get there, and then one evil bounce, if you're a Miami defender, saw the ball land perfectly in the hands of Axel Muller to complete his hat-trick, managed to force his way over the line. 29 all. Robertson added the conversion to steal it in overtime for DC. 31 points to 29, overcoming the Miami Sharks in the opening game of the season. Ridiculous stuff. Absolutely incredible to watch if you're a neutral. If you were a Miami Sharks fan, I'm sure you were pulling your hair out at that one. And if you're a DC fan, you'll be absolutely over the moon. Delighted with that comeback win in the most ridiculous circumstances you're ever likely to see in a game of rugby union football. But here we are. That's the nature of the game sometimes. Moving on to our next game, we saw the Nola Gold, another MLR mainstay over the last 8 seasons, taking on newish boys Anthem Rugby Carolina. Be honest, this one was a bit of a doing over for the Anthem boys. Nola Gold running out 35 to 14 victors. And the Gold looked pretty slick. They looked pretty tidy in this one, but it was against Anthem, who have yet to record a victory in a full season of Major League Rugby and continuing into their second year, still looking for that first victory. Anthem really need to work on their accuracy. You can tell that they're still new. They've had some new players coming in, benefited a lot from the implosion of the Jackals. So a whole load of new players have come into their squad, and you can tell they haven't gelled yet. Because one of the major problems that MLR has is that it runs concurrently with a lot of, or runs during the span of a lot of other global leagues, so teams aren't getting a lot of pre-season matches. I know that LA played against the Fijian Drua, and the Free Jacks played against San Diego in pre-season fixtures, but there isn't an awful lot of game time for these players to gel together and come together as a team, as a unit. It doesn't really happen very often, and you need that, especially when you've got a high turnover of players, as we see in Major League Rugby. So Anthem, not quite clicked, not quite gelled. Lots of handling errors, lots of kind of little missteps at set piece, line out, things like that, that will hopefully improve, and hopefully they will not be waiting too much longer to pick up their first victory, their first win in Major League Rugby. But yeah, Nola Gold were just far too good on the day, far more cohesive as a unit and as a team, and it ran away with it 35 points to 14. Do need to give a shout out to Pat O'Toole on his 50th MLR cap. Denied a hat-trick, but an excellent performance from the Gold hooker. And Nola, as I said, were looking pretty slick. They made the playoffs last year after flattering to deceive in previous seasons. But yeah, they look like they could well be there and thereabouts again if they continue in this form over the rest of the regular season. Dorian Jones at fly half as well had a particularly good game. He certainly looks like a better fly half than his dad. Kingsley Jones is a coach certainly for Canada anyway. If you ask any of their fans, Kingsley Jones was diabolical up there. But yeah, Dorian looks pretty handy as a 10 down in Nola, and yeah, he'll be looking to build on this performance over the rest of the season. A really intense game followed this one, the eternal battle of the Cats versus the Dogs. Houston Sabercats hosting the Chicago Hounds at the Sabercat Stadium in Houston, Texas. Houston, Texas, I should say. I apologise for my Scottish accent. So the Hounds came out on top in this one, 25 points to 22, in what was really a nip-tuck battle for most of the game. Lots and lots of intensity, lots and lots of niggling off the ball shenanigans, argy-bargy. Probably no surprise when one of the teams is coached by Pote Human, that is the Sabercats. He's renowned for having a scrap. I think he got himself into a bit of bother for fighting with people off the pitch. So it's no surprise that his team kind of reflect that sort of spiky personality, spiky attitude on it. But yeah, it's developing into quite a nice little rivalry. These two, very evenly matched. The Sabercats have been a pretty solid playoff team over the last few years. The Hounds got themselves into the playoffs last year, their second season in MLR, and it'll be interesting to see how they go this year. Obviously, there will be some changes again to both teams over the pre-season, as there usually is, but there will be some familiarity for folks over on this side of the pond with the Chicago Hounds backs, particularly Tim Sweel, formerly of Harlequins, Ollie Devoto, formerly of the Exeter Chiefs and Bath before that. But it was the forwards really who got the job done for the Hounds. Dylan Fawcett, MLR's record try scorer, formerly of New York, got their first try. James Scott got their second. McLean Jones got their third. And Adrian Carlson, a couple of penalties, giving them the lead. Sam Tuifua had brought the Sabercats within 3 points towards the end of the game, but the Hounds managed to dog it out for the win, and well done to them. Up next, we had our game of the weekend. This one absolutely had it all. A phenomenal spectacle and a great advertisement for the game of rugby union, particularly in North America. We had Rugby Football Club Los Angeles, RFCLA, hosting the New England Free Jacks, last year's and the previous year's two-time reigning defending MLR champions. And this was phenomenal. Scintillating attack from LA against the hearty defence of the Free Jacks is kind of the overriding narrative or the story coming out of this game, but I genuinely believe that this was a gripping contest between two fantastic rugby teams. New England were more opportunistic in the tries that they scored. First try for Jed Melvin was a big intercept when LA were hot on attack, totally against the run and play, plucked the ball out of the sky and coasted in 50 metres, little show and go dummy to beat the fullback and score. Christian Lealiafano, the Australian Samoan international player, brilliant fly half back in his day, cut down cruelly by leukemia at the absolute peak of his career a few years ago, but made an incredible comeback, not only to represent the Wallabies, but also played for Samoa, his native country, in the last World Cup. Now he's moved across to Los Angeles alongside compatriot Bill Meeks, and they really led this Los Angeles team, particularly in the second half. Meeks came off the bench and had a big impact. But Lealiafano's goal kicking, excellent as you expect it to be, took his try really well, opportunistic kind of pick and go off the side of a ruck. Not where you expect a number 10 to be, but his experience, his big game play, all came to the fore, and it was a brilliant performance from him. Absolutely fantastic. Gonzalo Bertranu, also their LA scrum half, the Argentinian international, he deserves some praise for his play. He was kind of buzzing around at the heart of everything that LA were doing. And between him, Lealiafano, and Meeks' experience, that's a really good kind of 9-10-12 combination that should serve Los Angeles really well over the course of this season. New England have arguably the best centre partnership in the whole of the league, with Leroux Milan and Wayne van der Bank in the centres. A lot of familiarity with those two. They've been together for 2 or 3 seasons now, the Namibian and the South African. And I mentioned earlier the amount of flux, the amount of change and rotation of players and squads in this league. And their combination in the centres really does show that familiarity and getting a settled, at least, unit within your team really does make a difference. Those two know each other's game inside out now after 2 or 3 seasons of continually playing together. Milan coming back after a brutal ankle leg break in the Rugby World Cup playing against the All Blacks for Namibia. It was a horrendous injury that he suffered, so it's great to see him back and at the top of his game. He was phenomenal. Put through a beautifully weighted grubber kick for Paula Balakana, the danger man on the Free Jacks wing, to score out of nowhere. Balakana just roared down the sideline, appeared on the shoulder of the covering LA defender who don't think realised quite where he was. Balakana stole in there, plucked the ball out the air, grounded it for the score. I think it was the go-ahead score for New England at the time. A great piece of play and a clever kick from Milan to set it all up. So that New England backline is firing. Their forwards are feisty. They get stuck in. You've got international quality all over the place. Andrew Quattrin, Canadian hooker. The Kiwi backline of Joe Johnston, Jed Melvin. Star quality all over the place. And they have showed why they are the reigning defending 2-time champions. They've gone back to back and looking for a three-peat this year, and they stand every chance of doing it. As I said, this was a truly exciting, gripping, involved, high-quality game of rugby that really is a great advert for the game in the USA and for MLR as a league. Absolutely the highlight game of the weekend. Great stuff, and I fully expect both of these two teams to be around playoff time, business end of the season. I think we could even possibly, and I'm going to put my head on the chopping block here, say that this is a potential final for MLR later on in the season. We'll see exactly how it shakes down, how it plays out, but I fully expect both of these teams, Los Angeles and the Free Jacks, to be there, certainly come playoff time, certainly conference finals even, and maybe even an MLR grand final. The only slight shame with this one was due to the shape of the stands and the camera angle, you couldn't quite see the whole field at UCLA. Looks a really good setup, and it's absolutely the perfect size of stadium for MLR, for the league, for the kind of crowds that we're getting turning up at the league at this stage. It's just a shame that there's kind of a brick wall either side of the pitch, so there's a sudden drop off at the bottom of the stands, and because of the angle of the camera, you can't quite see the near touchline. But it's a small nitpick. An otherwise great game, and what looks to be a really good setup there in Los Angeles. And it makes a lot more sense for the team to be playing there than in the LA Coliseum, where the Giltinis played back in the day, which was this massive cavernous stadium that just looked empty because there wasn't a big enough crowd to fill it. So at least at UCLA, smaller ground, smaller stadium, smaller stands, but it looks more full, and it's possible to build more of an atmosphere there, which will be really important, I think, not just for LA and for the team and the growth there, but also for the league as a whole, kind of take advantage of that and learn from that, rather than trying to go for big grand stadiums. You want small grounds, fill them up, and get them absolutely jumping, get them rocking, get an atmosphere going, and that makes the crowd feel and seem more involved in the game. The players react to that better, and it must be a lot more fun and looks more entertaining for people watching at home on TV. If they see the excitement of a busy looking stadium, they'll maybe want to go along next time. So I applaud that move, certainly. Just a shame we can't quite see the full pitch from where the TV cameras are situated, but that's the way it is. And then our final game of the weekend saw the San Diego Legion hosting Seattle's last year's defeated finalists at Torero Stadium in San Diego. Again, another move to a smaller ground. The Legion were going to play at Snapdragon Stadium, which is far too big for their needs at the moment. So, yeah, again, the smaller Torero ground, excellent move. The Legion ran out 40 points to 26 victors in this one. They were leading 28-0 at halftime. This was an absolute kicking of last year's finalists. Absolute hammering. And the Seawolves looked a shadow of them for themselves, really. They did not look up to the pace at all. But again, the Legion played a preseason game, Seawolves didn't, so that might have played into it a little bit. Seattle certainly did come back into the game later on, but by that stage, it looked like San Diego had kind of taken their foot off the gas a little bit. As I said, the Legion off to an absolute flyer, fully exploited their left-hand side and what appeared to be an apparent weakness down Seattle's right-hand side. I don't know if this was kind of deliberately targeted and exploited. Certainly they capitalised on it. Unfortunately, due to the time zone difference between me here in Scotland and the west coast of the USA, this game was on in the middle of a Sunday night, and I was not getting up at 3 a.m. to watch it. Also, unfortunately, the Rugby Network didn't have a full match replay of this one, and so I've only been able to see highlights, so I wasn't able to see if that was a tactical kind of move on the part of San Diego to keep hammering their left-hand side, Seattle's right, or whether it was just circumstance that they happily exploited. But in either case, yeah, they raced to a 28-0 lead by the break in this one. 3 of the 4 tries coming down that left-hand side. It was certainly something that they took full advantage of. They said Seattle had a bit of a comeback in the second half, but 2 late tries to secure them a try bonus point came, well, the fourth try came in the 84th minute, a long time after the clock had gone into the red. That kind of put a bit of a gloss on the score from a Seattle perspective. But yeah, they really looked well off it. A shadow of where you would expect, say, last year's finalists and previous 2-time champions, a couple of times runners-up now. You'd expect them to be a bit more on the ball at the start of the season, and they just didn't look like they were there. They didn't look ready to come into the season as yet. I say it's a short pre-season. You get in MLR only 4 or 5 weeks as opposed to the 8 that you expect to see in other leagues and other programs around the world. And those kind of 2-3 weeks do make a difference. And obviously the lack of pre-season fixtures hasn't helped a few of the teams here. This first league game of the season is their first hit out together as a team, as a squad, and there's nothing quite like playing at game intensity. You can train as intensely as you want, you can play internal matches within your squad, but nothing beats a game day in terms of preparing you for action. And yeah, the Seawolves just looked well short. Hopefully they will pick up as the season goes on. I expect them to. They should be again aiming for, playoffs, conference finals, MLR grand final. They should be expecting to be back at that level, but yeah, at the moment they do not look it after 1 week. We'll see how they're doing 10, 11, 12 weeks down the track, and hopefully things have picked up from a Seattle perspective. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. So that was our MLR fixtures for week 1. Week 2, we've got a strange situation. I believe this may have been the case a couple of years ago when we last spoke as well, but there are only 4 fixtures. That means 3 teams have a bye week in week 2 of the season, which makes no sense to me at all. I think personally as a player, a guy who's been playing the game for 20 years, I would want to be playing every single week, especially at the start of the season, try and get kind of match fit, get the feeling back into the legs and into the shoulders of playing every week, being at that competition standard, especially after a short pre-season. You want to kind of get into your rhythm as quickly as you can. So 3 teams missing out is weird, and I don't like it, and I think MLR as an organisation needs to tweak things a little bit. But anyway, we have 4 fixtures this weekend. Friday night, tonight, as you are listening, Anthem Rugby Club host San Diego Legion in Carolina, in Charlotte. I think this could be quite good fun, although again I'd expect the Legion to come out well on top. And then on to Sunday, no Saturday games, weirdly. I know it's a Six Nations weekend, but that shouldn't impact anything to do with MLR at all. So no Saturday games. On to Sunday, Chicago host Utah Warriors, making their bow for the season. That'll be a really interesting one to see how that goes. Miami host the NOLA Gold. Again, kind of a local derby down there in the deep south. Fun to see how that goes. And then Los Angeles round out the weekend against the Houston Sabercats. So yeah, could be really, really good to see where those two are at in terms of playoff aspirations as well. So yeah, looking forward to a great weekend of MLR rugby, even if there's only 4 games to catch up on, and we'll have a full review of those next weekend. If you can hear some scruffling in the background, that is our favourite podcast co-host, Sammy the dog, trying to get comfortable on his bed. He will not be out of the room when I'm recording. He doesn't want to be away from me. He's kind of got a bit of a separation anxiety thing as a rescue dog, so you will occasionally hear him scruffling away in the background of this podcast. And yeah, you're just going to have to live with it, because I'm not throwing him out. Deal with it. So there we go, that's our Major League Rugby roundup, but also we have a brand new professional league starting in North America, in the United States, next month. Women's Elite Rugby, WER, is launching. It's the first time that there has ever been a professional league for the women's game in North America, and I am really, really excited for it. Over the last several years really, the women's game has been growing exponentially, growing and going from strength to strength. The United States women's team winning bronze at the Olympics last year, Canada picking up the silver medal as well, has brought a lot of spotlight and a lot of attention to the sport. We spoke earlier on about the rise of Ilona Maher over this last couple of years, this last year especially. She's exploded into the stratosphere, gone to a whole new level. And WER is coming at exactly the right time to capitalise on that. It's going to be a 6-team league, with the 6 teams spread all over the country. We've got the New York Exiles, the Chicago Tempest, Denver Onyx, the Bay Area Breakers, the Boston Banshees, and the best name of the lot, the Twin Cities Gemini, based in Minneapolis and St. Paul, the Twin Cities up there in Minnesota. Over the last couple of weeks, the league has launched the team logos, and they all look really cool, like very modern, very colourful, very bright, very exciting looking. The teams have also announced their kind of foundational 5 players, so 5 players on each team kind of as their initial signings, initial announcements to kind of build some hype. Just in the last couple of days, as I am recording this, they have released their full squad lists. There's not a huge amount of prep time for these teams ahead of the league kicking off in just a few weeks' time. Since I wrote my notes for this and recording it, the season schedule has been announced. It's a 13-week season kicking off on the 22nd of March and going right through until the middle of June. So it's not a huge prep time. Again, 5-6 weeks pre-season to kind of meld these squads together into cohesive units. But there's definitely a big buzz about this league. There's a smattering of US Eagles full international players, Sevens international players kind of throughout the squads. We've got, Tess Fury, Catherine Treader, Alev Kelter's a big name, Bulo Matitonga, Rachel Ericke, Rachel Johnson, Big Ray J, Hallie Taufu, Mackenzie Hawkins, Jenny Cronish, Emily Henrik, loads of others. in and among these squads. Like, some of these players have left contract in England with the PWR, which is arguably the strongest and biggest, most successful women's league in the world currently, to come and play in the WER. So there's definitely a strong pool to play in this league. There must be some pretty decent financial incentives to do so as well, which is great for women's rugby. So you've got all these returning Eagles and international big name players to come and play in this league, as well as kind of a host of players from the club scene, from college rugby, to kind of give them a pipeline into the professional game. And I'm really, really excited to see how that works and to see how these players develop alongside these kind of more seasoned international players with international experience coming home to take part in this league. I think it's a really, really promising development and can only be a good thing for women's rugby in the United States. So yeah, not long now until the kit releases. I'm looking forward to those because I think, based just purely on the team logos, I think they'll be a lot of fun, lots of bright colours, lots of cool colour schemes. So looking forward to seeing that. And if you want to stay on top of all of the latest WER women's rugby news, the best place is on Instagram, I'm finding. You can follow them at Rugby Evolved, and I'll put a link down in the show notes for that. So yeah, looking forward to the kickoff of women's elite rugby in just a few weeks, and you can bet your ass we'll be reviewing it on the show here. So there we go, that's domestic rugby covered, and it seems to be in a pretty good place in the United States at the moment. But there's also some international rugby to get our teeth into as well. The World 7 Series returns this weekend in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, so not too far for the US and the Canadian teams to travel. This is a dual tournament, both men's and women's teams taking part in it concurrently, running together, which is excellent to see. The Eagles have named their rosters as follows. So the women have speedster Ariana Ramsey, Kayla Kinnett, Elena Olsen co-captaining the side, Christy Kershey, Rachel Strasdas, Jess Liu, Spiff Cedric also co-captaining, Autumn Locicero, Sue Adegoke, Saraya Ibarra, a debut at sevens level for Tessa Han, Alyssa Porter, and Autumn Kaplicki, all making the squad. And then on the men's side, you've got Aaron Cummings, Ben Brosell, Adam Channell, Will Chevalier, Peter Seo, Lance Williams, Scuba Steve Thomasine co-captaining, Faitala Talapusi, Lucas Lacamp also co-captain, Jack Wendling, Jake Brosell joining his brother, Peter V and Marcus Tupuola making up the squad. The women currently stand 4th in the overall standings after 3 tournaments in Dubai, Cape Town and Perth, Australia. The men at the moment are way down in 11th and flirting with the relegation kind of system also after those same 3 events. We're almost halfway through the International Sevens calendar, the World Sevens Series, with Vancouver marking the midpoint of the season. We've got Hong Kong, Singapore and LA still to come after this, and that those tournaments will take place in March, April and May respectively. So yeah, the US men's team have a lot of work to do to get out of that bottom 4 and the relegation kind of system. They need to get themselves some points, some good finishes, get themselves up the table a little bit. The women currently sitting pretty in 4th, but outside of medal contention at the moment, so they'll want to improve and get into that top 3 come the end of the season. And podium places will be the only thing that will get them there. They've got to start finishing top 3 and picking up some points on the overall ladder. So yeah, we'll be keeping our roving eye going over this as well. There's loads of rugby this weekend, and I will let you know how it all shakes down on next week's show. So I'm going to finish off with a brand new section of the show, which I am calling The Shit. Working title, if you can think of any better, please let me know. Get in touch on the socials or in the comments on our YouTube. But basically, we're going to go through the good and the bad of the last week. essentially. And we'll start off with the drizzling shit, the bad stuff. And I think we'll get an early one out of the way. Miami scrum half Damian Morley's box kick attempting to clear out at the end of the game. He had options to, secure the game. The ref told him the time was up. Stadium clock was correct. All Miami needed to do was get the ball off the field to win the game. He tried to box kick directly off to his right. Got charged down by, I think it was DC's second row. Could have flung it back to, I think it was either Elias or Santiago Videla, the fullback, that were straight behind him in the pocket for an easy kick, no pressure, would have seen the game out, got Miami home and hosed, and yet Morley decided to try and kick it himself. And yeah, I'm sure he felt like the ground could have opened him up and swallowed him. He must have been absolutely mortified with himself when the game finished the way it did. So I don't really want to kick him while he's down, but also, yeah, use your options, make better decisions next time, Damien, please, for your own sake, as much as anything else. Also from that game, another drizzling shit, DC's shirt numbers. Normally, I am a big fan of a nice old-fashioned, square or diamond patch on the back of a shirt to highlight the number against the, background colour of the shirt. DC have that, but the numbers are way too big. They reach all the way across the patch, so they join into the shirt colour, top and bottom, so it actually makes it even more difficult to see what the shirt number is. And I hate that. Like, the whole point of it is to make it clear, to make it obvious who each player is. So please, DC, Old Glory, sort that out, because it is the drizzling shits. Also on this, Anthem's handling skills, not good enough. Sort it, fix it, please. I'm sure you will for another week, but yeah, bad. Bad, bad, bad. And I kind of alluded to this one earlier on as well, but 20-minute red cards can fuck all the way off. I fucking hate it. A red card is supposed to be a punishment and a deterrent against foul play. The whole point in a deterrent is it puts the whole team at a disadvantage. And bringing a player, not the one that was sent off right enough, but still bringing a player on after 20 minutes gives the whole team a lift. When you're back up to your full numbers, you've seen out that 20-minute spell. Like, you're not supposed to get that with a red card. A red card has to punish the team that offends. Whether it's an individual player incident, which it usually is, to be fair, rather than a stacking up of team fouls. And it'd be really, really unfortunate if somebody was to get a second yellow for such an incident, but it doesn't happen very often. But yeah, with the amount of TMO checks and mitigation factors that are brought in now to discuss decisions, it's not all on a referee's individual interpretation of an event in the game. There's cameras, there's multiple angles, there's multiple people looking at this to come to a consensus. There really isn't such a thing as an unfair red card anymore. And obviously players don't want to get sent off, they don't want to let their team down. As I said, the red card should put the team at a disadvantage for the rest of the game. And, if you don't want to let your team down by getting yourself sent off the field for the rest of the match, don't hit somebody in the head. Like, improve your technique, work on your own individual skills, and make sure that your tackle technique, your ruck technique is where it needs to be to not be dangerous and to not hit players in the head. You've got to get low. You've got to make sure that your technique is right within the laws of the game, so that you are not putting, well, first of all, your opposition players in harm's way. We've seen over the last few years a rising number of cases of early onset dementia among rugby players. We've seen the lawsuits that have been brought in the NFL. Those are coming to rugby as well. We need to make sure that players are safe, and the only way to do that is by red carding dangerous foul play, head contact. We've got to eliminate that from the game. A 20-minute red card where teams can bring on another player isn't enough of a deterrent for me. And, I will always, always, always back rugby players. But it's got to be safe. It's got to be in the laws of the game. 20-minute red cards are not helpful. They do not eliminate these high tackles. And yeah, I will die on this hill. 20-minute red cards are fucking bullshit. They're the drizzling shit, and they can get all the way in the fucking bin. But anyway, relax, breathe. Let's get on to some shit hot now. Some good shit. The shit. I'm going to start off with the Free Jacks defence. It was a red, white and blue wall that LA were trying to repeatedly smash through. Like, there's a reason the Free Jacks are, I said it multiple times, back-to-back reigning, defending MLR champions. And attack wins games, defence wins championships. And the Free Jacks have shown that and exemplified it again this weekend. Shout out also, good shit, Pat O'Toole, Nola Goldhooker, 50 MLR caps last weekend, 2 tries in the game, had a hat-trick disallowed for a technical infringement in front of him at the mall from a line-out. Not his fault, unlucky Pat, but a great effort, and congrats on the 50. Another good shit, Alicia Washington on commentary. It's really nice to hear a recent international's perspective on the game, and while she wasn't perfect, I think she will really, really get better as she kind of settles into this role as a commentator. I think she will improve leaps and bounds, and yeah, she brought something new, something fresh, and I think that should be applauded. So nice one, Alicia. Also, keeping away from players, I thought referee Derek Summers in that Los Angeles New England game was really, really on it as well. A sympathetic referee. You can tell he used to play the game. He let the game flow when he needed to, pulled it up when he needed to, took no shit from any of the players when he needed to, and yeah, I thought it was a really, really strong, solid, convincing performance from him. And yeah, hopefully lots of other referees can pick up and learn from him as well, because he handled that game perfectly, in my opinion. Really well done, Derek. And lastly, finally, to round out the show, I just have to say it is shit hot to be back. I am delighted to be talking to you all once again on the All American Rugby podcast. It's good to be back, and hopefully it will continue for a very, very long time. I've really missed doing this. I really enjoy doing this, and I'm glad to be back, and long may it continue. So this has been the return of the All-American Rugby podcast. Thank you for joining me. I really hope that you are happy that we're back and that you've enjoyed the show. Obviously, it's a little bit different to how things were before. And yeah, we'll hopefully continue to make changes and improvements to the podcast as time goes on to bring you a new and global perspective on all things happening in American rugby. Part of that is we are looking for a co-host to help me with the show, either whether that's somebody full-time or several rotating co-hosts. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, if you are interested or you know of someone who might be, hit me up in the DMs on Instagram is the best place to get hold of me. And yeah, you can follow the show on Instagram at All American Rugby Pod. Very, very easy to find. If you are keen, then get in touch and we'll have a discussion around it. If you like your podcasts in a visual format, if you like to see what's going on, then we also have a YouTube channel as well, and we'll be popping a couple other bits on there as well, some bonusy stuff, some fun things that maybe don't work quite as well on Instagram. That is at All American Rugby Podcast, so you should be able to find us on there. If you could do me a favour and subscribe to the channel, that will really, really help. And yeah, like, comment, ring the bell, put notifications on, all of that stuff that people always say at the end of YouTube videos. But it really does make a difference. If you're listening on a more traditional podcast platform, whether that's, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, whatever else it might be, please leave a positive rating and review, 5 stars. Ideally, if the podcast player of your choice has that function, that would be absolutely fantastic, and it helps to grow the show as well. Also, please do not forget, we can get you 10% off all purchases at shopmlr.com. Use our discount code AARugby. It'll give you 10% off anything you buy from there. And yeah, it helps us out at no extra cost to you, in fact a reduced cost to you, and it still kicks a little bit back towards the show as well. AARugby is your discount code at shopmlr.com, gets you 10% off everything there. But yeah, that'll do it for this comeback show. The show is back on the road. The All-American Rugby podcast lives again. Thank you for being part of it, and I will talk to you next week. Cheers.